I hope you're not like me, where you just kind of realize that school's around the corner. We've flipped over pages on the calendar or scrolled through it on our phone, not even maybe recognizing that school shopping and buying books for the upcoming school year is really a thing that's happening. And with that, it can maybe lead some parents to kind of celebrate. Homeschool parents are getting ready and geared up for the new things we're going to teach at home. Those that send their kids to school are excited for a little bit of routine. And sometimes our excitement can overshadow some concern and maybe even anxiety that kids might be feeling. And as parents, when we kind of step into that, sometimes that can put us and our kids in dark places. Well, today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in our daily segment, Facing the Dark, we're going to talk to Dr. Kathy about how we should approach talking to our kids about the upcoming school year, and maybe some helpful ways to work through and prepare kids who might even have some anxiety right now. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So Dr. Kathy, as the summer months wind down, we're kind of looking forward to school. At least some of us are. I've got 2 kids that are and like 6 that are not. But that's the reality, right? Summer kind of is a highlight for many kids. And I think as parents, we try to make summer a highlight. We do different things on purpose. We spend more time with our kids in different settings on purpose. So school can kind of naturally then carry a little bit of like, I don't know, right? Like it's just kind of not as exciting because it's the same thing that we do every day, right? But for some, it actually can then create anxiety. And I think it's really kind of a natural part of adulting for us to kind of face monotony sometimes, right? Like we all have to pay bills, we have to go through these things. Fun things have to kind of come to an end. But at the same time, I do think that there can be really like crippling anxiety for some kids as they look forward to school. So when our kids kind of come back to us and we're talking about school starting and summer kind of ending, and our kids kind of maybe express some anxiety, what would be a healthy way for us to approach that anxiety and to kind of figure out a little bit if it's just summer blues, we don't want summer to end, or if it's actually that maybe our student or our child needs some extra care or some walking through in different things?
Yeah, it's a great question. Is it normal? Is it fear of the unknown? And do they need answers to questions? Do they want a chance to go tour the school again? Maybe they went to the new middle school last May, but they don't remember it, and they're terrified about their locker because they've heard horror stories about lockers and combinations not working or whatever. So do they need information? Do they need to simply sit with mom and hear stories? Do they, what is it that they need? And I think we need to be careful that we don't talk so much about, oh, it's going to be so exciting that you're in a new middle school. Like they maybe loved elementary school. They loved being the older kid in that school, and they don't necessarily want to go across the parking lot. And is the bus going to remember what school I go to? So maybe we don't talk so much about what we think is a big deal because we love that our kids are growing up when they don't see it the same way. And I think, like I often say, we just listen longer. We maybe ask the right questions when they're ready to talk with us about, why are you nervous? And I think too, let's make sure that we talk about the good things that happened last year. I don't know about you, Wayne, but it's sadly easy to remember bad days. And I think it's part of the sin nature. I don't think this was God's intent. We can go back in our memory and we can remember things that did not go well for us. And as a parent, you might be concerned that your child is going to be slow again in math, or is going to be embarrassed again by reading out loud, or is going to hate art again, or whatever. But what if we spend time now talking about the good things that happened and remind them of the strength that they've developed over the summer? And one more thing, read, and keep reading between now and that first day of school. Have them read to them, do some math for fun. Stop the 24-hour snack bin access, because at school they're not going to be able to just eat whenever they want. Start putting them to bed earlier, make them wake up earlier. Begin to prepare them, because they're not in their own little body is going to be able to figure out how to transition well if we don't walk with them and help them with that. All of that can be a blessing to decrease anxiety, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I think that that's really helpful and important for me as a dad to kind of think through. When anxiety hits our kids, I'll have to be honest, I'm just kind of a dad and I'm a little bit oblivious to it. I don't even recognize it. But I know that there's a responsibility and kind of a role that I have to guide my kids in these moments. What would you say to kind of parents about what actually kind of anxiety ends up doing? How does it kind of manifest in our kids? What does it kind of do to them a little bit? Then we need to take maybe a minute and allow something to kind of hit us that this is really hard for our kids. I think that's helpful sometimes, but I don't really recognize always what anxiety can do or help have a kid feel. Help me think through that a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone. Whether you have 8 kids or, one or two, I usually say, are they different? Are they behaving differently and you can't pinpoint why? Are they more critical? Are they more impatient? Do they not want to play with a brother they're usually able to play well with? Are they quick to disagree with you? Do they not want to serve by setting the table, which has always been their Tuesday night chore? So if there's change in them, something's going on, and it could very well be anxiety. Now, what I teach is you don't necessarily say, hey, Peter, are you anxious? Because now he's anxious that you think that he's anxious, and he might not know. Like, if we don't know what anxiety looks like or feels like, what makes us think an 8-year-old is going to know? So we don't necessarily say that, but we say, hey, you don't appear to be your cheerful self. What's going on? And we give our sons and daughters time to answer those questions. And I sit with them in the dark. You go to bed. When they're putting themselves to bed, or when you put them to bed, hang out longer, because a lot of kids will be more vulnerable in the dark. And they'll help us, because anxiety, one of the scary things about it is that we don't concentrate as well when we're anxious. We don't make healthy decisions when we're anxious. And we don't want attention drawn to ourselves when we're anxious. Well, hello, go to school. Attention will often be on you because the teacher will call on you. And you are going to want to be thinking clearly. You are going to have many decisions you have to make. And so anxiety gets in the way of all of that. So if we can observe it and talk with our kids about, how to calm them down. And I'm going to tell you something, Wayne. Oftentimes, it's not as big of a deal as we think. It's the answer to one question. What's my first period of the day? I can't remember. Is it English or math? Mommy, what am I going to do if I can't find my math room? I mean, seriously, these are legitimate issues, and they don't understand that there will be teachers in the hall to help them, that they're not going to be judged as being stupid if they don't remember the first week of school, how to handle lunch policy or whatever the case may be. So answer their questions, teach them strategies if you can. Can you maybe put an index card in their back pocket that has their schedule on it? So it's really easy for them to find and look at without it being a big deal where they have to dig through a backpack. There's little things that we can maybe do.
So Dr. Kathy, I think that's really helpful when we think through kind of those helps and kind of things that we can kind of walk them through and step into that. I'd like to ask you maybe to push the envelope a little bit. When we're walking kids through kind of these anxious thoughts and anxious times, what bullet points are important for us to hit to make sure that we're addressing maybe some of the bigger things that even maybe our kids might not even identify? Maybe things like their identity or other things that you might kind of have insight on. What's really important for us as kind of to hit as parents so that our kids, maybe, everyone's going to hit an anxious time, but maybe it doesn't have to be crippling or debilitating because they have this, so-called kind of scaffolding to hang their identity, their purpose, their kind of different things on. What are the bullet points we need to hit as parents for this?
I think we need to say to our kids, you can do hard things. Again, when children tell me, school was hard, I'm like, good. And they're like, no, you didn't hear me right. School is hard. And I'm like, no, it's really good. If it was easy, you wouldn't need to go. There are going to be things that are hard. There will be things that are new and potentially challenging. You can do hard things. You learned to ride your bike this summer. You learned how to call grandma all by yourself this summer. You learned how to leave a message with grandma when she did not answer your FaceTime call. You fill in the blank. You've learned to do hard things. And so don't make everything feel like it's all going to be easy. It won't all be easy. They will be called on. They will not find the page number that the teacher mentioned because their brain is just, where's the bathroom? I need to go to the bathroom, And so talk with them about, you can do challenging things. You can do hard things. A hard day doesn't make it a bad day. I think those kinds of philosophies are good. And then you guys, to be available. I mean, seriously, pick up the kids in the pickup line without the radio on. No Audible book, no Spotify, silence so that they'll talk with you. To maybe the first week or two of school, make simple meals so that you're not in the kitchen a long time being stressed about making sure the spaghetti is done at the same time that, the meatballs are done or whatever. Just trying to keep things simple so that you're super available to the kids because they're going to want to tell you stories and they're going to want to ask you questions. Those are the things that I think matter. And you can say things like, remember who you are. and remember whose you are. And you can be the adult who says, remember you're creative. I'm so glad you have art class today. We can affirm them in ways that are really a blessing to the kids.
I really like the idea of kind of preparing. I think that this conversation today is really helpful for us to think about preparing our kids for school, maybe even preparing our homes for school. And I would say maybe even preparing our minds for the conversations we're going to have with our kids before they go to school or start up school again. There's kind of a unique passage inside of scripture that I think is kind of fun to think about when we think about preparing. It comes actually out of the book of Ezra. And the context of this is that Cyrus, the king of Persia, has his heart moved by the Lord to allow the people of the Lord to go back to Jerusalem to build the temple. And this is what's recorded in Ezra, chapter 1, beginning at verse 5. Then the heads of Judah and Benjamin and the priests and Levites, everyone whose heart God had moved, prepared to go up and build the house for the Lord in Jerusalem. All the neighbors assisted them with articles of gold and silver and livestock and goods and valuable gifts, in addition to all the freewill offerings. Now, it's a little phrase in here that Ezra says that makes my imagination run wild, where Ezra writes down that people's hearts were moved by the Lord, and they went up and prepared to go up and build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. There's a lot of things inside me that wonder, what does that look like to prepare yourself to go and now build the house in Jerusalem? What does that look like for a family or for a young man or a young woman to say, the Lord has touched my heart and moved me in such a way that now I am going to go home and now prepare to leave? I'm sure there were basic things that they did, but I think there's also something that we can kind of glean from this concept and this story as we look forward to these other things that we're going to encounter in the upcoming months as summer kind of wanes and we start into a new season. And that's this idea of preparing, that the Lord is moving us in these different directions and in many ways calling us to prepare. So in this next week or two, what are the things that we can do to prepare to step into that next season that the Lord has? This is something we're going to talk about here with Dr. Kathy in our weekly segment, Dr. Kathy Says. But it's also something that I want to encourage you to do. Maybe sit down, write through some lists. What would it look like for you to prepare to walk up and encounter the next season that the Lord has for us? Maybe it's the next season in the upcoming school year, but maybe it's also a bigger season for you. I think this concept that Ezra highlights and identifies here for the people whose hearts had been moved to join in the movement to go and build the temple of the Lord. I think that little phrase that they prepared to go up, well, that's something that I think we can kind of enact. And I think that doing that can be a bright light for us as we walk our families into this next season that we're going to encounter here in a couple weeks or maybe a couple months. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. If you have any comments or thoughts or questions you'd like to hear Dr. Kathy talk about a certain topic, I want to encourage you to write me. You can email me at wayne@ignitethefamily.com. That's WAYNE@ignitethefamily.com. I'd love to hear your feedback, see if there's anything we can kind of bring into the show, or maybe address a topic that's been bothering you or something that might have you in a dark place. So on behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook and the rest of us here at the Celebrate Kids team, I want to say thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.